Hello everybody, welcome back to my television review series. Today we'll be discussing The Old Man Season 1. Just finished watching it, I watched it on Hulu. I'm not sure who produced this one. It's either FX or Hulu. I certainly watched it on Hulu, but network was FX. So what we do with these ones, I will give you my overall impressions and grade. After that, you're going to want to shut off the video if you've not seen the show based or not based on my recommendation or not recommendation, and because then we'll be doing plot synopsis and character development, and we'll be discussing any major themes. Again, nothing super unique or to talk about. Again, pretty much through all the major themes of society, but I guess maybe some cinematography major themes. But I'll give you the overview. It says, well, this is kind of a long one. Dan Chase absconded from the CIA and lives off the grid. When an assassin arrives and tries to take Chase out, the old operative learns that to ensure his future, he now must reconcile his past. The FBI's Harold Harper is called on to hunt him down because of his complicated past with the rogue fugitive. When Chase proves to be more difficult to apprehend than the authorities expected, a highly trained special ops contractor is sent to pursue him as well. While on the run, Chase rents a room from Zoe McDonald, who draws on reserves she never knew she had to survive the day when she learns the truth about her new tenant. So overall, get a 97% on Rotten Tomatoes, 84% on Google, and 7.6 out of 10 on IMDb. Honestly, I did not like this one. This was what was the last show we watched? Under the Banner of Heaven. That was a D+. We're gonna rack up another D+. So this was again at the higher end of off-putting. What did I find off-putting about the show? Again, my scale is F. I turn off the show mid-season. D is actively off-putting. C is doesn't do anything for me. B is entertaining. A is extremely well done and entertaining, or insightful, or something really made you think, or just something new or novel. But I thought the characterizations were weak. I would say it's just, again, I call this the philosophy problem, where it's just like there was the background. And then, but like every scene, I thought the plot development was very weak throughout the show. It just we'll get to it. I don't want to get to the plot synopsis yet, but it was just weak development throughout the entire show. The overall tone, I think I would say most of the characterizations were off-putting to me, honestly. So like most of the shows, it's like this character I didn't like, or this character I liked. This I was like, I'm not sure who I liked in this entire series. So no one really struck me as good. But just like too much scenes where it's like, again, CIA range, we're scooping out something, and then I'm going to give you some philosophical insight, or I'm going to give you some analogy or some metaphor, and then you're going to have some deep, insightful realization. That shit drives me fucking insane. In the same way, extremely insecure emotional relationships are, or characterizations are. And so we had a lot of emotional characterizations. We had slow plot development. No characters I really liked. It was labeled as a thriller. Again, I didn't really look much into it before, just kind of just scrolling through Hulu. But I thought there'd be more action to it. It says thriller, but it wasn't. I was just thinking more at least action sequences, and there wasn't much. It was just a lot of, and then we also had flashback scenes in the same way. Power Season 6, after Angela dies, Ghost is talking to Angela, and it's just like, people thinking about people that are dead or whatever. All of those types of scenes are just actively off-putting to me as well. So we had a lot of those scenes where it's like a dead person is talking to a living character, and they're supposed to learn something. And so all of those scenes are just off-putting to me. So we had some of that in the show too. But I did not like this one. So D+, upper ending of off-putting. I just thought weak characterization, slow plot development, and a lot of insecurity and broken philosophy in the writing. So that is my overall thoughts for The Old Man Season 1. If you've not watched it and would like to, based or not based off my recommendation or thoughts, you're going to want to shut off the video now. We will be going through the plot. So we open up, Dan Chase, again, he's living off-grid. An assassin comes, tries to kill him. He's got 2 dogs with him. They're it's one girl dog, one boy dog. But they're his sidekicks. He's got his backup. He's been living off the grid for a while. So we had kind of flashback scenes between it's about a 30-year time frame. Something's happened 30 years ago, and now we're just picking back up. And so he takes out the assassin, and then once that happens, he's got a daughter, Abby Chase, who So the overall kind of setup, and again, it was another one where it's like typically for season 1 it's kind of hard, from scene to scene. Is that the same actress as that person? Is that the same character as the scene before? Before you really know the characterizations. So that also had played into it again, where it's just, I'm not sure who's doing what, just from a new show. But I just thought the plot development was really, really spotty and really weak. But so he calls his daughter, and so kind of at the beginning you're not really sure if the daughter's alive, because the Harold Harper, the dude at the FBI. So the FBI set up as Harold Harper, kind of like the vice director or something. Abby Chase is an agent with him, along with I think Raymond Watson. I think he's another FBI dude. But it's not my Raymond Watson is another one that just kind of threw me. I didn't know if he was with the. And then you have Faraz Hamzad, who's like this. I don't know, I don't call him a warlord, but just like a militia leader in Afghanistan. I believe it's in Afghanistan, but they're like fighting this war against some Russians. And so you have a bunch of flashback scenes when Dan Chase and Harold Harper are younger. Again, it's hard just picking up which character from 30 years ago in a show you've never seen before. So I just thought like the background, the way they set up the show and the characterization, I thought was weak for every character. But he dips out of the thing. He goes, he finds, why don't they have Zoe up here? But he goes and he has to get out of town. And so the next place he lands, again, it's not really sure why, if this is like a tenant or like a single family home or an apartment building. But he meets up with this chick Zoe, and basically they like go on a date. They get pulled over, but after Dan, the opening scene is him taking out the assassin. But so Harold Harper and Dan Chase have history with Faraz Hamzad, who's this Afghanistan militia leader. Harold Harper had supplied guns to Dan Chase at a younger age. Dan Chase was very close with Faraz Hamzad and his wife, who later is called, what is her name? Not Angela, Abby Chase. But it's an Arabic name. But I believe it's in Afghanistan, somewhere in that region. And so that's kind of the setup, is like they're trying to figure out, Faraz Hamzad wants Dan Chase dead. You're not really sure why throughout the whole entire show. Harold Harper and Dan have relations. And then after the initial assassin attempt, Harold gets on the phone with Dan and it's like, if you turn yourself in now, and we deliver you. So the FBI has some sort of, in Faraz Hamzad is now like, from the 30 years cutscenes till now, he's got a lot of power. So the American government is setting up some deal with the militia leader that basically they hand over Dan Chase. You're not sure why. It's going to rest the whole plot development of the entire season. You don't find out until the very end. It's rather boring. But they hand over Dan Chase, and then Harold Harper, again, he's tied into it, so he wants Dan Chase to loop himself or give himself up to Faraz. And he said, basically threatens, if you don't do what I say, then I'm going to have people come after your daughter. So they have two or three more people come. I think it's 2 people. But Dan Chase has this tracker under the thing. And so Harold Harper's running this FBI unit, but he tips off Dan because again, they have history, so he's like kind of protecting that there. His subordinates, who I believe is Raymond Watson, definitely initially questions Harold Harper as, how did Dan Chase know that the FBI was following him or had a tracker or something. So Raymond Watson's very quickly on to that Harold Harper is in contact with Dan Chase. And Abby Chase is also with Harold Harper in the FBI as a subordinate. But they send 2 more people to the FBI to apprehend him, to put him on this plane, to give him to Faraz. And he kills the 2 people. They have a fight scene. Basically, they throw the tracker, the car comes, Dan smashes him with his car. He takes one out immediately. Kind of a fight scene, struggle scene, and then the dogs come loose and come running and chew and maul the dude to death. And not in a graphic way, but it's implied. So it's like a super violent show or anything. But probably could use some more fight sequences, to be honest. But so that happens, and then Dan Chase, that's when he lands at Zoe's place. And so they have a relationship. Like I don't think it's sexual. I'm pretty sure it's not sexual, but the implications of the characterizations were not apparent or clear to me throughout the entire show. It's exactly what was going on. And so Zoe and Dan just go on a date, like a friendly date, and Dan is probably, 68 to 74. Harold Harper's 65 to 68. And so you kind of have this weird Morgan Boat who's like, he kind of like calls himself like the father of both Dan and Harold, and they're all kind of old fuck. But later in the show they refer to Morgan Boat as the old man. But I don't know, just some other like, I don't know if it's the actual father. I can't. I think it's played out as an actual father. I just don't know. I think it's the Morgan Boat character. Yeah, but they're all old. They're all really fucking old. So it's like, what little old man? Which one? Anyway, they go on a date. They get pulled over. The FBI picks up Dan Chase's picture off of the traffic stop. They go through a DUI checkpoint. There's like a scene where it's like Dan slashes a police officer and shoots the cop, and then it's just like that's like an imagination scene. But at this point, Zoe doesn't know who he is, and then basically they cook together. She lets him stay under circumstances at the apartment or whatever kind of living facility she has. Wasn't well put out, but so he agrees to stay. Again, they have some more philosophical talks about something, and then basically another hitman. Harold Harper hires a hitman, which I believe is Julian Carson, to come to Zoe's house and kill Dan. And so Zoe's basically like, you know, I think Dan at this point has revealed to Zoe that again something's up with him, or she knows something. But another hitman comes to try to kill Dan at Zoe's house. And so Zoe's going to like work. She's like, you know, leave. You better be gone when I'm here. I think he does tell her what she is, but she's like, better be gone when I'm here, or like wait till lunch or something. And I think she says, you better be gone. Regardless, hitman comes right as she's leaving. She hears the bullet go through the window. She goes back inside, sees the struggle, lets Dan's dogs out of the car because they're barking or whatever. They can't get to the two people fighting. And the dogs once again maul Julian. And then Dan takes Julian's gun point blank and shoots him. But it's not like Julian doesn't die. So again, a highly trained CIA operative that's smoking the ops that are coming for him. He doesn't kill Julian Carson in that scene. It was just mind-numbing to me, as opposed to like, why not just have a different character and send another hitman? But basically it was like, Harold had called Julian, and I believe it was Julian, again, the characterizations were not clear to me, and told him to kill Dan, and he fucked up, and then how Dan didn't kill him in that scene is just dumb to me. But then Zoe gets put in the trunk of the car, takes her to a field, it's like, you know, we have to be in this together for a while, or till this resolves. So then they're kind of on the same team. Again, they're flying to. Dan has this investment company that's done really well, so they have to get some investment to recruit. What is his name? Suleiman Pavlov, somewhere in I don't know if it's French Polynesia, but they go somewhere and they have to basically get this Russian investment to get an in with Sully Pavlov. At the same time, the FBI team has met Nina Kruger, who's a lawyer for Faraz Hamzad, and so it's basically trying to like, again, it was just a slow development through the whole thing, but they have some interactions, and so basically Dan Chase and Abby Chase, or Harold Harper and Abby Chase, the FBI agents, decide to get on a plane to go to Faraz Hamzad. They get on the plane, they don't know where they're going, they get off. Harold Harper fails some test about knowing about, again, in the cutback scenes 30 years ago, they're basically just fighting with the Russians, and you get some backing of Abby Chase is the wife, Angela Adams is the daughter. She goes by a couple names, but Abby Chase is the Afghanistani woman married to Faraz Hamzad. And so she's basically, the whole story there is basically, he's fighting Russians, she's like feeding Russians information about their operation to like either get help or to slow down Faraz Hamzad from like accessing this like mineral deposit that would make him powerful or something, and just in terms of like raw resources, not like any mysticism in the writing. But so I just like, what the fuck is this? And so that's basically what's going on there. And there's a scene where they like let go a Russian troop, and Abby Chase reveals to Dan Chase that's what she's doing, and Faraz doesn't know. Later in the show, Faraz says he does know. So that's kind of what's happening in the 30-year-old cutscenes. Fast forward to today, the Faraz tests Harold Harper to see if he knows something or something else, and it turns out he doesn't. He needed to know like what tickets or how many people were about the tickets. You don't learn that till the end. But I thought that was just weak as fuck. And then, so they get back off the plane, and then after they get off the plane, they're like in an airport, and then you see the Raymond Watson looking guy, And then Harold Harper and Abby Chase are like, who's gonna take the hit? It's like, hit from what? Isn't that the FBI team or something? And then Raymond Watson also like allegedly has some ties to Faraz Hamzat or something. So I don't know if that's a special operations unit, and whatever the fuck it was not clear. And so then there's like no scene. It's just like Harold goes down the stairs and then runs away, like literally in this big airport thing. And Abby Chase is just at this like kiosk stand. And then all of a sudden, Abby Chase is being held by the FBI. But it's like there's some back and forth of whether Harold Harper and Abby Chase, who's going to take the fall, and I'm not sure for what. But Harold Harper and Abby have some sort of relationship. Harold's son and his wife had died, so he's also like caring for his like grandson very minimally throughout the show. But him and Abby have like a father-daughter relationship just from like professionalism or from professional life or something. So whatever it is, Abby gets kidnapped and is being held by Julian, who I don't know how he's not dead, if there's a different guy. And there's another, I think his name's Mike, and there's a couple FBI agents in this room. And so we get another scene where it's like the guy they're just like they're in Afghanistan holding an asset, trying just on the lookout. And it's another philosophical scene like, oh, I just know they're there. I just know they're there. And so the tone of the show actually wasn't bad. It wasn't on the backdrop of broken philosophy. It's just opposed to more fight sequences and just dry reality of brutal war or militia. As opposed to, again, here's brutal war and militia backsetting. Now I'm going to give you some broken analogy to have the viewer have some great realization about philosophy. It's like, Jesus Christ, just go shoot some ops. Go do something interesting. But she's being held. Dan and Zoe they go to enlist this Suleiman guy, but the lawyer Nina Kruger is also at the party. So Dan gets a meeting with Suleiman, kills a couple of his guards because Suleiman, I guess, helped Hamzat or something, but he kills some of the guards, doesn't kill Suleiman, leaves that place, gets on a boat, jets out, and then gets arrested by like the FBI and I don't know, the special ops or somebody because Raymond Watson's back. And so they're driving these four Range Rovers, and they're like, you get a call and it's like the director. So it's again the structure of the like who's in charge is not apparent to me throughout the show at all. Again, I'm really not sure what Morgan Boat, who exactly his role is in all of this. But he asks someone to hurt his son or something, and it's like he talks about both Dan and Harold being his sons. So it's like I just don't know what the fuck is going on. God, this show was terrible. God, this one was bad. And so anyway, Dan and Harold are now back together, and they're like, they get this call to turn around and go back. Basically, Faraz Hamzat tries to kidnap or take Angela Adams, who's being held in that Afghanistan type of area with the 3 or 4 dudes. There was like one fight sequence at the end of like the very last episode, which was decent. But the FBI dudes kind of like break out from these people that are trying to get them. I mean, a couple dozen guys, fight scene, kill 6, 7, 8 people trying to abduct Angela. But again, just not sure who's holding Angela. I thought it was the FBI. I think it's the FBI to like leverage Dan, but it's just not clear to me who's who. And so they do that, but then they're driving away, and this woman just steps in front of them and shoots the driver. And so Angela Adams is re-kidnapped again by Faraz Hamzat, taken back to him, and I forget what her native name was, but that happens, and then back Dan and Harold, they get told basically Faraz is reneged on saying he just wants Dan, and he's going because towards the very end you learn that again Dan that Abby Chase really wasn't Dan's kid either, it was Faraz's kid. And so Dan and Abby escaped from Faraz after again exposing the plan or the information that Abby was feeding the Russians information. And Dan was supposed to kill Faraz and didn't, and that's why this whole thing's happening. And yeah, but basically you learn that it was just like you kind of throughout the show you're not sure. Well, Angela Adams, the decent angle of this one would have been. Because Angela Adams is working for the FBI, and it was I thought decent characterization development of being Angela Adams being Dan Chase's biological kid, kind of like as a mole with Harold Harper. But I guess it was like Morgan Boat who put it there because Dan asked him to. So it just was not fucking clear to me. That was like the only maybe decent thing. But then about 3 or 4 episodes in, Harold Harper calls out Angela Adams, clearly knowing that Angela is Dan's daughter. And so that was the only interesting angle of the character in the whole show for me. And then they blew that up after about 2 episodes. And so then you learn at the very end that Dan and, because you then kind of throughout like the middle of the show, you think Dan and Abby, Faraz's wife, just kind of had a kid together after they escaped. But it definitely seemed to be at the very end that it turns out that Angela Adams wasn't Dan's kid or Harold's kid. It was just Faraz's kids the whole time. And so basically Faraz just was, this whole thing was like trying to get back from a kidnapping from 30 years ago. And so in the car, now that the Faraz is reneged and he wants Dan to go to be delivered to the airfield, and he has kidnapped back his daughter Angela Adams, Dan and Harold decide like definitely be in it together and take out the people following them. So they shoot the tires, the cars flip, they kill a couple of the dudes, but the other 3 Range Rovers are now flipped over off the road, and they're just speeding away. And so you get one other scene, and you think you're gonna get like some like just like something else, but it's just basically like Dan and Harold walking off on this kind of like abandoned airstrip thing area, and Abby Chase or Angela Adams being returned to Faraz Hamzat, who's now a very old man. So they're all old men. The show has like 6 or 7 old men. So the old man, I'm not exactly sure which one they're referencing in the title. So is Dan Chase the main character, but they're all pretty fucking old. And then they do legitimately reference Morgan Boat as the old man in the show. So I don't know. This one was definitely it was just season 1, hard to figure out the characters. I thought the plotting is about who was what's the background, what's the setting, whatever. I thought was horribly laid out, and I thought the actual plot development was boring as fuck. And it took 7 episodes to basically say this kid is Faraz's kid. So and again, it's labeled a thriller. There was very little action. There was a lot of, again, the tone wasn't bad if it wasn't broken philosophy, but overall, most if not all of the characters were off-putting to me. So that is what I thought of The Old Man Season 1. So we've got 2 D+ in a row. Might make it back out to theaters. Who knows? Continue with my book club, language litigation integration. Just keeping the content rolling. So thank you for watching my review of The Old Man Season 1. And I did look it up. They were renewed for Season 2. Unless I am dry as fuck on Hulu, or even I'm still on Hulu at this point when it comes out, then I probably will not be continuing on with this season or this series either. Again, Banner Under the Sun was a bunch of religious ontology to have broken philosophy, and this one was a bunch of just broken philosophy in the context of CIA and FBI and international relations and operations. So D+, upper end of off-putting, and it was just a drag to get through. So thank you for watching my review, and see you in the next one.